Hi, I'm Robbie Bobby, adult child and para-alcoholic. The topic of this video is the hidden power between the steps. However, let's begin with the power that's in plain view, the power within the steps themselves. In step 1, we admit to being powerless and that our lives had become unmanageable. Now, it's somewhat of a paradox that there's power in powerlessness. However, the power is not actually in powerlessness itself. No, the power is in the ability to see it, to recognize it, and finally, admit it. Before taking this step, admitting to be powerless is seen as weakness. Therefore, you could say its power is also hidden. However, when we take this step out of desperation and surrender, it opens the door to a power greater than our measly self-will or ego. And you don't see that until you've moved on to step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. There's power in step 1. There's power in step 2. And there's power in the connection between them. And as you'll see later, it's a two-way connection. Each step helps the other. When I first worked the steps, I was able to see, slowly by slowly, the power within each of the 12 steps. Going through the steps again, I was able to see, slowly by slowly, the power and the connections between them. However, since I saw the steps as linear, 1 through 12, I only saw 11 connections. I saw the connection between steps 1 and 2, between 2 and 3, and so on, which makes perfect sense considering how we learn the steps. We learn them in order. Each step seems to prepare us for, as well as supports, the following step. And when you get to the end, it seems like the work is done, but in fact, you're just at the beginning. Step 12 is not the finish line, but rather the starting line, because it invites us to practice the steps in all our affairs. And the more you do this, the more connections you see, which is the real topic of this video. In order to visualize this, I like to picture the steps in a circle rather than in a straight line, like a clock face, but with 12 steps instead of hours. This model is inherently spiritual because a circle has no beginning and no end, only implied continuation, which is how the steps are lived. There's also no hierarchy. No step is more important than the next, like a circle of chairs at a meeting. And as each person spiritually supports every other member in the circle, each step spiritually supports each and every step, not only the ones adjacent to it. Once you visualize the steps in a circle, it's easier to visualize the connections between them. Perhaps the most important is the connection back to step 1, which now looks natural and obvious, like a clock. Time doesn't stop at 12. It continues right along to 1, 2, and 3. Except, unlike a clock, step 12 connects directly to every other step. First, by virtue of its opening line. We have had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And the closing line. Practice these principles in all of our affairs. Step 12 reminds us to practice the steps, either sequentially or individually, in all areas of our life. And when we work any step, it expands the spiritual awakening promised in step 12. As such, there's a mutually beneficial relationship between step 12 and every other step, which creates 11 connections, 22 if you consider they're bidirectional. In other words, the support goes both ways. But there's nothing special about step 12. Every step connects to every other step in a similar way. For example, step 11 can bring an extra boost of spiritual energy into any step you're working on. Imagine working step 1 on its own, admitting that you're powerless and your life is unmanageable. Now, imagine bringing in prayer and meditation, improving conscious contact with a higher power, asking for guidance and the power to carry it out while working step 1. Can you see the difference? Every step can be improved and deepened by bringing in step 11. Conversely, by doing so, each step allows you to expand the practice of prayer and meditation, thereby expanding step 11. Can you see this? The synergy between the steps is the hidden power. With it, 1 plus 1 does not equal 2. It equals much more. In other words, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So, how do you create these connections? You don't, at least not directly. The connections form on their own as you work the steps. However, the more you work the steps, the stronger the connections become. It's as simple as that. The first time I worked them, I skipped over step 3 because I was confident I can work the program without help from above. I also skipped over step 9 because making direct amends was too intimidating. So, after my first pass, I missed the benefits of these 2 important steps, which includes the support they provide to the others. On my second pass, I realized that my resistance to step 9 traced back to not having done step 3. This made me seek an understanding of God or higher power that would allow me to take the 3rd step. Once I did, step 9 fell into place. Another way to conceptualize this is to substitute the steps with the principles they represent. It's widely accepted that steps 1 through 12 represent the principles of honesty, hope, faith, courage, integrity, willingness, humility, love, discipline, perseverance, awareness of God, and service. Therefore, as you work the steps, you're also working or practicing these principles. Therefore, the connection between steps 3 and 9, which really includes step 8 as well, connects faith with love and discipline. This points to the true nature of these connections and the synergy within them. If you had trouble seeing the power between the steps before, hopefully you can see it now. Okay, everything I spoke about so far is related to the circle. The perimeter of the circle is the steps, and within lies the web of connections that support them. Does anything exist outside of the circle? Absolutely. You and everything in your life is outside of the circle and interfaces with it through the steps. For example, step 12 suggests that we carry the message to others. We do this at meetings. We do this one-on-one with sponsees. We do it over the phone with fellow travelers. We do it with non-program friends we think would benefit from program. And more importantly, we do it over time. This creates many connections from step 12 out into the real world. Needless to say, there's power in these connections as well. In step 1, we admit to being powerless. What I'm powerless over exists in the real world, outside of the circle. And the more I work the program, the more things I realize I'm powerless over. My step 4 inventory connects to things I have done outside of the circle, to character defects inside of myself. People I have harmed connect to the circle via steps 8 and 9. I think you get the idea. In my mind, this completes the picture. I consider the circle as a spiritual hub that interconnects every area of my life and maintains balance, serenity, and recovery. God is in the steps and also in the connections. By the way, I referenced the standard steps in this video, but the same concept applies to the Tony A steps as well. Perhaps that will be a future video. And that wraps up this video, which was meant to be food for thought. If you got something out of it, please click like and subscribe and forward to a fellow traveler. I'm Robbie Bobby. Thank you for listening, and as always, keep coming back.